thank you for coming. I would like to introduce today our two speakers. Are both artists from two well-known architectural firms in London. Elisabetta Destri Nicosia from HTA Design, and Guidi Veneri from yes, sorry, the pronunciation, my mistake, sorry. And both are involved in design for sustainability, but it's not only about environmental issue. Is about how to develop a sustainable built environment, try to focus on the environmental, social, and economical issue, and try to approach the problem as a whole. I would like to introduce their project and their activity on sustainability from two different aspects, from the project on the existing building that have been refurbished, and on the development of new buildings. Thank you. I will leave the floor to Elisabetta.
Okay.
If I can control the lights. Is it, that is the, you know where the lights are.
Okay, I can start in the meanwhile. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm Elisabetta Destri from HTA Design. I will just introduce me a little bit, and I will introduce my practice as well. This is us, HTA. We are 200 people now. We are recruiting other people. We are always growing, but at the moment we are 200 people. And this year we celebrate the 50th year of the practice, really. So what we are doing at the moment is looking back at our projects that we did in the past, and also to learn and to see examples of what we did previously and what we can do in the future. We are mainly based in London, and in fact I'm based in London, but there are other practices, there are other offices in the UK as well. So we have another office in Manchester, one in Bristol, and one in Edinburgh as well. We are investors in people. That means that we pay a lot of attention to our staff and people in general. We share sets of values, collaboration, care of each other, etc. And we try to reflect this in our project as well. The structure of our office is effectively this. We have multiple teams. It's not just about architects and designers. We have master planners. Okay, so hopefully you can see it better as well. We have urban designers and master planners. We have a team of landscape designers. So they basically focus on open spaces, and we try to integrate the design of open spaces to the building design as well. We have a team of planners and researchers. So they look at policies, legislations, and they try to embed, you know, all relevant information for the planning application process in the design. We have a team of graphic designers and visualizers. There is us, sustainability consultants, mainly focusing on sustainable aspects and technical design as well. We also have teams specialized in engagements with people and interior designers as well. So as you can see, different teams all working together in the same practice with the intention of designing places for people, not necessarily just building, but places really. What we do in the sustainability team is to try and convince clients, and also the wider team, the design process, to embrace an holistic approach. That means that rather than focusing just on one element of the design, we try to look at the various elements and incorporate all the elements together holistically. We also offer technical advice. We offer technical advice related to daylight and sunlight calculations, energy for domestic, energy for non-domestic buildings, overheating analysis, microclimate analysis. But we also offer advice on rating systems as well. So there are several rating systems here in the UK, like BREEAM, New Construction, BREEAM Communities. We will see something in the presentation. And they all offer advice, technical advice, which also come from research that try and again to embed sustainability in the projects. We also work with industry. We are specialized in offsite construction, so modular construction systems. We're just about to realize and to complete a 44-story building, which is fully volumetric modular construction system, which is built in just 2 years. And we are about to start another project, which is actually even taller, 49-story buildings. One of the tallest buildings, actually is the tallest buildings in Europe, and I think in the world to be manufactured, completely, fully assembled on site. So once we talk about offsite construction, we basically talk about standardization, making sure that everything is taught from the very beginning rather than left at the very end for adjustments. And we also do research and innovation projects. This is an example of one of the latest research projects we just completed, where we try and create a tool to inform people and the customers about the value of their homes. So when you buy your home and you purchase your home, rather than just buying and getting some general information, is there anything else you need to know before understanding the real value of the home you're about to purchase. But today I wanted to mainly give you an example of sustainable building and sustainable places we design. We just got planning condition just 2 weeks ago, so it's fairly recent. So we will be starting working on site fairly soon, possibly in a couple of months. This is Ravensbury, and this is the master plan of Ravensbury, which is part of it's an estate, as a Ravensbury estate, really. It's part of a wider regeneration project, which includes other 2 sites, High Path and Eastfields. They are not adjacent, but they are part of the same regeneration project. High Path and Eastfields are high-rise developments, whereas Ravensbury is just 200 homes, and as you can see, it's just low-rise developments, really. The location is just fantastic because the site sits between 2 green areas. So there are 2 parks, one to the north, one to the south, and in between there is this really greenery area, which at the moment consists of mainly bungalows, which are not mortgageable, meaning that there is no really value in refurbishing any of them, with the except of some buildings to the eastern side. So before starting any work on this, what we did was to understand the existing condition. If there was anything to retain, we tried to retain any building, and then for all the other houses that were really not mortgageable, we decided to demolish them and rebuild new homes. And in here, what we are doing is to double the density. So we were starting with 60 homes. We are providing almost 200 new homes. The idea that really was the main idea of the whole project was to design the building around sustainability principles. So what we did was to create a vision together with our client, which in this case was a housing association, Clarion, and then also we worked with the local authority, which in this case is Merton. So we created a sustainability vision with Clarion, our client. We also created a local plan specific for this particular area and for the other 2 estates. So there is a Merton Estates local plan which embraces the principles, sustainability principles covering Ravensbury as well as High Path and Eastfields. And there is also a sustainability vision from an environmental perspective, as basically covering us as designers. And we applied some sustainable principles referring to the BREEAM communities standards, which gives a sort of initial understanding of what we can incorporate in terms of energy efficiency, water strategy, ecologies, looking at light pollution as well. Obviously, sitting between two parks is very important not to impact on the nature. But most importantly, we also looked at the demographic needs and housing provision. We did a lot of research with housing provision, labor skills, and consultation. Effectively, we started the consultation in 2013, and we completed the consultation last year. So almost 5 years on consultations with residents to try and understand how we can best design places for them. We also applied other standards. We didn't really do a sort of checkbox exercise covering everything, but we basically extrapolated some key information from some industry standards, such as well, active house, building for nature, LEED, etc., etc. And the key elements from these standards were also embedded in sustainability vision. So this is us on site, talking to residents, doing consultations, as I said, for 5 years, collecting feedback, proposing solutions, but also discussing those solutions and really taking the feedback back to the design. And we engage, obviously, yes, with the GLA, but also with the local authority, but we're trying to take advice from universities, also from manufacturers, and every other groups of people really interested in the science, such as the Friends of Aylesbury Park, which obviously are there for the park, really. And this is just an image showing the integration with the existing building to the left and the new buildings on the right. And the streets that we imagine completely green with open spaces where we try and encourage people to spend time outside, potentially encouraging activities, so cycling spaces, but a lot of space for walking. There are plants that are thought to be managed by the local community as well. Obviously there is a management plan, but the idea would be for people to be there and spend time there and potentially create a local community. There is, as I said, an existing community, but what we want to do would be to try and create a new community with the new residents, which will be thriving. We also did some technical analysis from the very beginning, not just at the very end. This was done back in 2014, and we looked at the microclimate conditions on site. We did a sort of comparison with the existing and the proposed situation, looking at the wind analysis, the wind conditions, wind directions, but also sun availability, surface temperatures, etc. Because obviously when you build something, you tend not to provide greenery area. That means that potentially you could be affected by microclimate, creating negative effects. So we try to understand how we could maximize the environmental benefits on site as well. And as I said, we look at the day, not just at the conditions throughout the day, not just in the morning, but also at night, what we could do to minimize light pollution, but offering security as well. So safety and security, as well as control of light pollution, were key in this sense. There is a flood risk assessment that was conducted, and in fact there are such measures, which are sustainability measures for avoiding flood risk, and there is as well running through the site completely designed in accordance with the landscape team. So effectively it's not something separated, it's completely embedded and integrated with the landscape design. And we embedded 12 circular economy principles as well. So this is the summary of the 12 principles that we selected with the client. And we also try to embed them not just in the design, but also in the we try to select to apply them, encouraging people as well. So the future residents, we wanted to encourage future residents to participate in the development of the scheme and the realization of the scheme as well. And in fact there is a social element which is part of the circular economy principles we selected here. So what we did was to highlight 6 themes, actually 9 themes, and this was done at the very beginning, and then the 9 themes that were then developed in the Sustainability Implementation Plan. Sustainability Implementation Plan, which is part of the construction stage activity. So at the very beginning we thought, okay, what we think is important for us and what we think should be brought along the line during all the phases of the design stages, but also post-construction. So we created a sustainability implementation plan, selecting the key principles from the design stage to the following stage, and we prepared a document that will be sent to manufacturers for tender. That means that people who will be constructing the site will have to consider sustainability measures as well. So, for example, we have to consider the performance gap, which is the gap between the performance you think the building will have at design stage and the actual performance of the building. So how do you avoid that there is a discrepancy between the two? Or landscape and ecological value. The landscape team designs some spaces together with ecology. How do we make sure that the strategy actually works on site when the site is delivered? And then we discussed apprenticeships programs with the client to ensure that appropriate skills and jobs will be delivered on site to create new jobs and opportunity from an economical perspective. And because to realize that space, the master plan obviously takes time. Effectively, the time will be divided in 4 different phases. So there is phase 1, just 1/3, just some buildings will be constructed, and then phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4. Then what we thought was that each measures should be implemented in phase 1 and potentially improved in phase 2, and then further improved in phase 3 and phase 4 to raise the bar and set different targets over time and really develop a sustainable place. So this is my final image, which is kind of representative because it's our sort of vision where we think that different people, young, old people, should live there, potentially using the external spaces, integrating, materials on site. We reuse some materials, some bricks effectively will be replaced there, but also using the external spaces and also being a little bit more active, potentially walking and potentially cycling. So, and this is an example of a new regeneration, and I hope my colleague Judy will be offering some ideas for refurbishment projects.
So hello, my name is Guidi Veneri. I'm an associate architect at Bargazettas. We are an architecture practice. We're based in central London. This is us. We are 35 architects. Our office is just off Regent Street, and this is a map of our projects. As you can see, this is London. Most of them are in central London. We've done some projects outside the city, we've done some projects abroad, but at the core of our work is in the middle of the city of London, and therefore we deal a lot with existing building and refurbishment and renovations. So today I'd like to take you through a journey through a different project we worked on, existing building refurbishments, and I want to show you different aspects of sustainability while I do that. And for that reason I chose 2 different clients of ours and 2 different areas in London. So the first client that I chose is the Crown Estate. We've been working with the Crown Estate for the past 10 years. The Crown Estate owns all the building along Regent Street. For all of you that don't know where Regent Street is, it's the road that basically connects Piccadilly with Oxford Circus. It's very central in London. It's just on the northern side of the River Thames. And they own all of Regent Street, and they own a bit of the side to the southern western side of Regent Street, which is called St James's. So I'm going to talk about 3 projects, 2 of which are linked together. The first 2 projects are Seminary Street and Quadrant Arcade. I'm going to tell you a bit about the sustainable aspects that we treated this project, and then I'm going to show you some before and after pictures just to show you how sustainability can also be integrated with quite interesting and striking design. Seven Eyre Street and Quadrant Arcade runs at the bottom of this building called 7 Eyre Street, which is an office building. Quadrant Arcade is an historic shopping arcade. The two projects were developed at two different times, but they're basically the same building. 7 Eyre Street is was the first outstanding listed building assessed under BREEAM New Construction 2011. When we finished it at the time, it was emitting 40% less of energy than the equivalent new build. So it's also a grade 2 listed building, which means that it's protected historically. And so achieving that kind of result for us, it was a big deal, because it's much more difficult to upgrade existing building than it is to build them from scratch. We integrated a lot of sustainable measures, including adding PV panels to the roof and a green roof as well. And we also connected, so the building was also a part of a bigger regeneration in the area, of this area called Quadrant, all owned by the same client. And we basically also linked the building to a central a plant, which also gave us the opportunity to save a lot of energy, because it's a kind of plant that recycles the heat that it produces when it produces energy, and it reuses it for other things like making hot water. So a few photos of the project. So this is 7 Eyre Street, looking at the back of the building. Regent Street is on the other side. This is what it used to look like, and this is what it looks like today. So we rebuilt the top 2-story mansard. You can probably gauge the solar panels on the top left side and the green wall. And this is the entrance as we found it, and this is what it looks like today. This is the main office entrance, and this is the office reception. So you can see all that good design, all that sustainable and integrated things, what you can actually come up with in terms of design, as well as putting in a lot of good things for the environment and for the building. A few more pictures of the office space. And this is Quadrant Arcade. So again, at the bottom of the building, we had this historic arcade. It had this massive column in the middle of the existing entrance and faceted shop fronts. People could not really, it wasn't really successful. People could not really see it and weren't really using it. So what the client wanted to do was wanted to use it to connect the front of Regent Street and the back side. So, and this is what it looks like today. So we opened up the entrance. We put in new curved shop fronts, and we increased the permeability of the space and the connection between the front and the back roads. Same again, picture from the back, and we've seen an aerial view just a few moments ago, showing the top bit of the mansard roof, and this is the bottom, and this is what it looks like today. So despite the rain in the day, we took those photos as much more lit and permeable. This is the interior, looking from the back to the front, to Regent Street, and this is what it looks like today. So new floor, new shop fronts, new color scheme, new lights, and you know, it's really much more successful because of the regeneration that we have done to it. So another building that I want to talk to you about for the same client is 1 Haddon Street. 1 Haddon Street was so the bill of sustainability that we looked at in terms of Haddon Street was more the well-being part of it. So this was one of the first building accredited for WELL. So WELL and BREEAM are two different accreditations that deal with sustainability. BREEAM looks more at the fabric of the building, while WELL looks more about the end user of it. So it looks a bit about the fabric, but it looks a lot and thinks about and make the designer think about what the end user is gonna do in the building, and how the building can enhance the health and well-being of whoever comes and stays in the building. I mean, we all probably know that we spend most of our time indoors, so enhancing natural light, biophilia, creating different type of experiences in the building just help us just stay healthy. Again, we work a lot with the office building, so this was also an office building. It was a different type of office building in 7th Street. It's a co-working place, and what we've done here is that we try to create different styles of work so that people can stand up or sit down and work in different positions and in different ways so that you don't get cranky by the end of the day. We also built specified furniture that was locally sourced and with lower level of volatile organic compound, which means that the furniture and all the elements that we use for this refurbishment were not harmful for the health of the people that were going to work in it. So this is the outside of 1 Street. So the entrance is where the red brick building is, but the building spans across all the corner on the upper level. The lower level are currently occupied as shop, and so we didn't touch them. This was the what the office floor plate used to look like. So quite dull and quite dark, and this is what it looks like today. So you can see on the top right corner a picture of the different kind of desking. You can pull your desk up and down. You can work by standing up or by sitting down, even by kneeling down, depending on what you prefer. And then you have different style and type of spaces. You have meeting rooms, you have co-working spaces where you can just rent a desk and sit next to somebody else that is doing a completely different activity, or rent a small office space with a few desks. Again, this is the top floor. It's a mansard roof. All the skylight, despite there is a little bit of light coming in, were blocked off. So what we've done is that we opened them up, bringing as much of natural light in, and created a very lit space with a lot of greenery inside. We also added a new roof terrace at the back. Creating amenity space and breakout space also help and gives you a lot of score points in terms of the well and the well assessment. And this is a picture of the reception when you come up at the first floor and you come into the building. So another area the second area that I want to talk to you about, the second client I want to talk to you about today, is Greenwich Hospital. There are two areas called Greenwich in London. There is North Greenwich and South Greenwich. This is South Greenwich Cutties Arc. This is not only an historic area, it's also World Heritage Site. So whatever we have done here was had to take that into account as well. So Greenwich Hospital is the Royal Navy oldest charity. They own all the Market Island side, which is the aerial photo that you can see in this slide, and a lot of buildings, a lot of mixed-use buildings around it. So I want to talk to you about Greenwich Market specifically, but I also want to talk to you about a few of the mixed-use buildings that we have refurbished around the area. The aspect of sustainability that this client and kind of project are linked to is more social than energetic and health related. What we've done so when we took over the Greenwich Market project, there had been a lot of proposals before us. So we found that when we came on board that we found the Greenwich was a very, very strong community. The area already had a very, very strong sense of community. There have been other proposals to refurbish the market. They were quite punchy proposals. They were proposing to tear some of the buildings down, completely transform the market, put new buildings in, put hotels in it, and the community was not really responding well to that. So when we won the pitch for this project, our client really brought us on board because they wanted a more soft intervention. They wanted to retain the building, they wanted to enhance the space, but they also wanted to keep the sense of place and community that was already there and the people that already lived in Greenwich really cared about. So we did a lot of consultation with the community. We created new spaces that integrates well with the old ones. We promoted and encouraged local business to come in and sell both in the market and in the shops that we redeveloped, and we also reused a lot of the materials that were already there. One example that I always give was that we took up about 40,000 historic cobbles, refurbished them and put them back down. So we created a more we created level access and a much more permeable place which everybody can use, but again retaining its historic character and its community character. So this is one of the entrances of the market, just new signage, repainted, a new floor, but nothing, not a big departure for what used to be. And this is that was the southern side. This is the northern entrance from the main market area. This is what the main market area roof used to look like. So quite dull, corrugated metal on the roof. What we did in this case, we decided that the structure was fine. We didn't have to throw it away and start from scratch. So we did take it all out, sandblasted, put it back, repainted it, and then we changed all the covering of the roof, so make it more transparent, and so bring in more light in this space. And we also repaved the whole area. As I said before, we took out a lot of the existing paving, put it back down, putting in a new drainage system, so enhance the space without completely changing it. So we have also redeveloped a few retail and restaurant units within the area. So this is what it used to look like, and that's what it looks like today. And we also created a new market area instead of this existing waste yard. So we redesigned and rethought about the storage and the waste facilities. And instead of this, today you have this new pavilion, and if you go to Greenwich Market on a Sunday, you'll find all the food stalls in this area and all the other stalls in the main market area. So we freed up a lot of space for new traders and for local traders, which is what the client wanted to promote. And I mean, to conclude, a couple of the mixed-use building I mentioned before, again, trying to bring in as much of the independent restaurant and office, independent restaurant and retail as much as possible, and not big chains. The client was very adamant that they didn't want chains to start popping up in Greenwich, but they wanted to encourage the locals to stay there and to keep within the community. So this is 1 Nelson Road. We are at the northern corner of the site. This is the corner between Nelson Road and King William Walk, and this is what it looks like today. It's a sushi restaurant at the bottom, and this is what the residential inside look like. So again, kept all the historic features. You can see the double glazing, the secondary glazing inside, and kept all the historic features, but enhanced the building so that it consumes less energy today. And one last example is number 14 on the same road. This is not an historic building, but it's locally listed and is still in the World Heritage Site, and is an Art Deco building. What we've done here is that we refurbished the restaurant at the bottom, on the ground floor and on the first floor, and then we added two bedroom flats on the first floor, and in place of the existing roof we added a new double bed flat, which is set back from the existing parapet so that you cannot see it from the street. So this is another view of the same top floor. The agreement with the council was that you didn't have to see it, you couldn't see it from ground, from street level, which you don't, but I assure you it's very much there. And yeah, this is the view from the roof there, and you can see Cutty's Ark and Canary Wharf and the River Thames at the back. And thank you very much. This is it.
You can take the questions then. Let's see if it's that one. Yep, great.
Okay, so now we have time for some questions, guys. So we'd like to ask some questions to our guest speakers. Yep.
Just a question about the first presentation. On one of your slides, you
So for digital inclusion, we wanted to use websites, application, etc., to keep the community informed. So what we wanted to create was something easy to use, but also giving, a means of giving access for residents and future occupants to get access to information about local experiences, really. What I didn't say about that project was that effectively there is a small community center at the center of the estate, and we wanted to make that space as much flexible as possible. So there are places, there is a room, effectively, it's a very small community center, which is there already. Obviously we will be providing a bigger rooms for them, but we wanted to create a space which is very flexible throughout the day to allow, for example, families to live there and hold events, but also for any kind of people really they want to use the room in the evening as well. And we thought that we can provide, for example, actually not us, but the client can actually provide some training for future residents, because the client is effectively a housing association, to make sure that even elderly people can use, for example, a computer to navigate internet and kept informed about the events on the local community. To go a little bit further, effectively what we discussed with the client was the possibility of engaging the community for the other two estates, because the other two estates are part of the same wider project. So we want to bring other people on site, and the idea was to publish the information and create a sort of virtual community as well as a real one, just to be informed about what's happening in the other two sites as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Other questions from the audience? Yeah. Well, actually, I have a couple of questions for the first presentation. I think it was very interesting all the 12 principles of circular economy, and I'm wondering if you can tell us something about how those principles were applied and what are their specialities, some other spatial translations.
Yes, effectively those 12 principles were highlighted for the client. They were discussed with the client, so for the housing association, and effectively for each element we developed one page, because we wanted to keep everything quite simple but also effective. We also thought about potential targets to be applied for each strategy, so that, for example, for this project we could actually achieve a specific target which wasn't particularly ambitious because it was the first project, and then potentially for each additional project, so for the future, Clarion could actually apply the same principles even further and potentially improve themselves. So it was a possibility for the client to inform the client, to educate the client, but also the local community, to set targets and think about some principles, because we developed them, yes, at the beginning, but not like 6-7 years ago. They were developed a few years ago, only like 2 years ago. So in reality, they were developed early on the design stage, but not at the very beginning. That meant for us to structure something that could be applied now up to a certain way, but also developed even further for the future and for other projects. So the idea was to, for example, think about the community now. Is there anything where we can think about training for people about materials on site? And basically there will be the possibility for, because that part of the 9 principles are also incorporated in the sustainability implementation plan, which will part of the tender stage application, meaning that then the contractor has to take those principles, circular economy principles, and encourage local community to inform the local community about the work that they will be undertaking. In that sense, they will be delivering social value and economic value. Economic value because of the additional work, social value because they try to engage with the community during the construction stage activities as well.
Thank you very much. And then for the second presentation, I was particularly interested in the thank you for both for your very interesting presentations, by the way. Sorry, about if you can tell us something about the relationships between the contemporary interventions in those heritage contexts but with a specific link to the sustainability principles. So if there would be, maybe my question is a bit complicated, but it would be like the 3 keywords. So heritage, contemporary interventions, and sustainability. So
Yeah.
how those 3 things were connected, maybe in some.
Well, it depends on the project, obviously. For example, in Greenwich, it was more the client was more interested about the social aspect of sustainability than the energy aspect of sustainability. Also, being a market and being an open air, there is so much you can model and I try to address in the energy side of things. What is with the mixed-use buildings around, and we did the BREEAM standard, and we developed a few assessments that measured what the sustainable improvements that we planned for the buildings. So I think with historic buildings, with existing buildings, a bit more complicated than with new builds, because you have to work with what's there. And with historic building, you have another layer of difficulty, which is also which is the fact that they are protected. So no matter what you do, if it's an historic building, you have to get approval to demolish anything inside. You want to take down a partition wall, you have to demolish. You have to ask for permission. So depending on the client, depending on the council you work in, you just entail different paths. And we find that the Crown Estate they have a sustainability policy. They're very advanced in that kind of regard. So every time you sit down with them and you develop a brief, sustainability is always one of their top priorities. So we found that it's quite easy with them, despite the fact that their portfolio is mostly existing building in central London. We find it quite easy to work with them and to try to push as much as we can in terms of the fabric of the building, more than any other aspect, because obviously being mostly office buildings, there is only so much you can do for the community, especially in central London. So you can do a lot for the user, which is the well bit, and then you can do a lot for the fabric of the building, which that's covered by BREEAM. But in terms of the social, it works quite better in a public space or in a housing kind of context, but less so for offices. So I hope I answered your question.
Yes. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, one question is about, I remember in one slide in the first presentation for Elisabetta, in terms of employment, you highlighted the fact that you also included this aspect in some way in the project. But how, as an architect, you can realize or implement this requirement, because sometimes can be difficult. I was wondering, especially for in the Clarion community, what it seems more easier for Clarion to develop it rather than as an architect, what you can do.
Indeed, it was challenging, and this is why it is very important to have commission and a very good integration and communication and engagement with the client, because that was only possible because of the interest from Clarion, the client. We discussed that at length from the very beginning. That was part of their brief as well. They wanted to improve the skills and bring some jobs, being housing association with also interest in sustainability aspects. And what we did was to commission a study about the current situation, taking evidence of what we have at the moment, but then about the implementation, if we discussed with them what they wanted to deliver during the construction stage activity. But we also had workshops together to understand if there was anything from the design perspective and design team overall that we could do to help this delivery. And in fact, that from that discussion, we decided to place the community center at the center, because initially it was actually moved closer to the entrance to the site, which is further to the north, which is very close to where the existing community center is. And that's because we said, okay, you leave your car there and you connect people, you create this space, and then you enter to the site. Whereas discussing with the client, they said, okay, but we really want to encourage community and social aspects as well, bring value, and potentially some jobs as well. But we also think that if you design spaces that encourage external spaces in the front, and you also place the community center, then perhaps we can bring some activities there. So yes, the work from the economic and employment perspective, that thing was, yes, mainly delivered by the client, but also discussed with the design team. And also us, because us, HTA was the designer, but also we were the sustainability consultants, especially us. My job was effectively to look at the other two sides as well. So the discussion was also how to integrate social aspect, not just with Ravensbury and the site itself, but the other sides as well. How we make sure that skills that we develop during the construction activities in Ravensbury can also be moved to High Path, for example. So that, for example, if we know that people specialize in off-site construction activities get specialized on phase 1 on Grangebury, and then they can also move their skills to High Path and then to the other estates as well, and you create like skills that are demanding on the market really. So, but it was a discussion mainly with the client.
And a question for Julie. Regarding the social sustainability, I was wondering if in that project it was a co-creation project, so you were also able to engage the community or some member of the community to understand and what to explore what was their the desire or what they would like to have there, and also and maybe they also were involved also in the design activity, or mainly in initial phase of understanding the need. I was wondering how the process was developed.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Greenwich is that whether you want it or not, they were involved. I mean, the community was very strong there. People had their own mind made up in terms of what they wanted. So we didn't really have to go and knock on any doors. They were coming to us. As I mentioned, so there had been a few different schemes from the area, and I'm not going to name names, obviously, but they were not well received from the community. The scheme that was there before we took over eventually got planning, but the client decided that they finally decided that they wanted to depart from a radical intervention, and they wanted really to listen to what the community was saying, which was just leave our market alone, leave our history alone, and just enhance it and refurbish it. But we don't want to come here and look at something completely different tomorrow because it works. People like to come here. It just really needs a full refurbishment, because obviously the cobbles are not leveled and people cannot access it. We love our roof, we love our market, we just need more space for it, and we need more shops, but the locals were already there. So what we did is that obviously as part of the planning process, you have to engage, you have to do public consultations depending on how big the project is. So we did that, and then it's some areas of London, despite being on a big city, still have the old the random old lady or middle-aged guy that comes and pops his head in and wants to know how the site is going, and if he's not happy with with your answer, he's just gonna go back to the council and make a complaint. So to some level that was actually a good thing, because it kept our client and us on our toes, and I think we managed to deliver a space that it's completely renewed and it's got the facilities that it needs, but we haven't destroyed what the history and the sense of community was. And funny story is that I have a friend that lives not that far from there. I never talked to her about that particular project because we don't really talk about work. And one Sunday we were in the market about last year, so Greenwich Market was finished in 2015. So we were walking around and she's like, "Oh, Judy, this looks amazing." It's like, it's not. It feels like, it was really, really dull and dark, and and now it feels like it's been like this forever, but it's renewed. And then I told her that we actually worked on it, and so it was very rewarding to feel that somebody that lives there actually saw the change, but didn't think that someone took anything away from her. So yeah.
Very good.
I always tell that story. I think it's a good
No,
one.
that's very important, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any final? Yeah.
Sorry, I'm really curious. Do you find working with old buildings and historical buildings as more of a restraint or an opportunity?
That's a good question. I find that it's more of an opportunity, because obviously we have more constraints, but I found that without constraints I don't have as much fun at designing as when I have that many, and some people can think, oh, but you can't do anything because it's protective. That's really not true. You just need to think a bit harder sometimes. That's not saying that new build is straightforward and you don't have to do any work for it, but I think having constraints in general in whatever side, you know, even with two parks, you know, on one and the other hand of the side, that's also a constraint. So there is, it's a myth that you know, unless you design a cube in the middle of nowhere in no one's land, then you'll always have something, and that's what makes the process a bit more interesting. At least that's what I think.
Further question? Any other question, guys? Right, you are all up. Great, fantastic. You are making efforts. Thanks very much, because you are all very tired after the reviews. Maybe there are few people that have slept. It's very good. Go on.
I'm very interested in urban development plan. So on the top soil, so what kind of material of the cover? Envelope of the envelope, the material.
Material, the roof material. You mean about the project, the apartment intervention?
Oh, it was zinc. Is this image that you're talking about? Is it this one?
Yeah.
It's zinc. It's a sheet of zinc just folded on each other with a seam on a wall construction with insulation and plywood inside.
How do we when the lifespan when goes up? So how do you maintain this?
We do design buildings. Usually clients ask for a 15-20 years lifespan at least for a building. So yeah, and to maintain, you just wash it with water. There's nothing you know complicated about it. It's like washing a window. You just wash the material with its appropriate soap. Let's call it.
Any other points or queries? No? Okay. So thank you so much for both presentations.